What should you really be bringing to Philmont? Let's talk about it today. And you're watching Andy Parrish Outdoors. Well, hey everybody, Andy here. Thanks for joining me today. And yes, I'm going back to Philmont, and I thought it's time to update my gear list from all those years ago. So today I'm going to walk through what's in my personal kit and a few items that are in my son's, budget-friendly scout kit. I want this video to be more about how you put together your own gear list rather than a video about here's what I've got, go out and mirror exactly what I'm doing. I want this more to be about how you put it together, figure out what works well for you, and then build your own kit. So I'm going to talk about mine. I'll talk a little bit about some things that are in my son's kit. And then I'm also going to post down in the description below my lighter pack page. So all the items that are in my kit, weighed out, links to where you can go find those. And then also an example of, a more budget-friendly scout option with some different things. Some are things that my son's taking. Some are just some other suggestions of things that you might look at and consider, in building your own personal kit. So let's get into the big three. So first, let's talk about tents. So the elephant in the room is Philmont actually provides a two-man tent for you and your crewmate. So very easily, you use the Philmont tent and you split it up. So somebody's going to take the poles and the rain fly, and somebody's going to take the body, or some combination of that. It's about 5.5 pounds. So you're going to be under 3 pounds per person when you look at just the tent itself. And then you're required to bring 5 stakes per person. So that way you have enough stakes for the tent, and then you can donate a few to the dining fly for crew gear. So if you've got 5 stakes, you're half of the tent. The other thing that you're going to want to bring is a ground cloth for the Philmont tent, which is required. My recommendation in that is to just use a very lightweight, something like a Tyvek or the window film, the polycryo plastic sheets. You can cut out a 5x7 for about 2 ounces of weight. Now, you can also bring your own tent. And for that, I'm going to recommend that you look at something that's under, about the same, about 3 pounds in weight. So look at options where you're not going to be more on your sleep system than about 3 pounds. So you're going to be splitting a tent between you and a teammate, most likely. So you can get a tent that's heavier than 3 pounds and divide it up, or look at some ultralight stuff that's out there if you can afford it. But try and keep your own personal tent to be 3 pounds or less when you look at stakes, ground cloth, and whatever portion of the tent you're carrying. So next, let's talk a little bit about your sleep system. So Philmont recommends in their guidebook to adventure that you can sleep comfortably in temperatures down to 20 degrees. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to get a sleeping bag that's rated to 20 degrees. It says that you need to be comfortable in temperatures down to 20 degrees. And it goes on to mention that you may increase that warmth by having warmer sleep clothes, by having a warmer air pad, all these other factors that could allow you to have a different temperature rating on your bag, but yet still be comfortable down to a 20-degree temperature. Now, that's a little conservative, and that's fine. We don't want to necessarily go against their recommendations. But what I would say is if you're going to have something like a 30-degree bag, then you're going to want to have, a fleece, a puffy, maybe some glove liners or a little hat or something that you can wear in bed in case temperatures were to drop below 30 degrees and you can still be comfortable in your sleeping bag. So start with probably about a 30-degree bag is what I'd recommend. If you look at synthetic bags, they're going to be a little bit bulkier. And if you look at down bags, either quilts or sleeping bags, they're going to be a little more compressible and a little bit more lightweight, but more affected by water. So if they get wet, they lose a lot of their insulative properties. So for a lot of my scouts, I recommend go the synthetic route. It's just easier, it's safer, it's simpler. But if they're more experienced, or if they're more responsible, if they really take this stuff seriously and they have some backcountry experience, I don't have a problem with a scout using a down bag at all. They just have to make sure that it stays dry. They have a dry bag for it or some method to keep it from getting wet, because then it just doesn't have the same value as a synthetic bag. So start with a 30-degree bag is probably a good ballpark. You can do a 20-degree bag if you want to be more cautious. Your entire sleep system needs to be able to be comfortable down to about 20 degrees if necessary. So you're going to want to have some kind of pad that's going to insulate you from the ground. Now, the foam pads will give you, maybe an R value of 2, so a little bit of insulation from the ground. Some of the air mats might have a little bit better. If you're going the air mat route, you might look at something with an R value of 3 or above. And I think that would be probably plenty warm paired with a 20 or 30-degree bag. So keep that in mind. And then also try and target your sleep gear, all of your sleep system, to be, under 5 pounds for sure. But if you can, try and see if you can get that under 4 pounds and make some choices and try and get that as light as you can possibly get it. I believe on my sleep system is under 3 pounds. Okay. So I could go probably even a little bit less than that and probably get to about 2.5 pounds, but that's where I sit right now. So I think it's fair that you can get under 5. And definitely, if you make some good choices, you might be able to get under 4 or maybe even down to 3. Now, finally, let's talk a little bit about your backpacks. Okay. A lot of people start with this in your big 3. I actually like it to be last of your big 3, because your pack needs to be big enough to hold all of your gear. So you almost have to make your decisions on your gear before deciding on your pack. Okay. Now, the one way around that is just to get a huge pack that no matter what you decide, your stuff's all going to be able to fit into that pack. But then you might end up with a pack that's just too big or bigger than you need it to be. Most people are going to probably find that somewhere between a 65-liter pack and a 75-liter pack is going to be the way to go. And I'm in that camp too. I think for the average, the large majority of people that are going to Philmont, they might not be doing a ton of backpacking. This might be their only backpacking trip ever. That may be you. Or you may be an avid backpacker like I am that's doing it 3 or 4 times a year, every year, for decades. So the more avid backpackers, I think, tend to pare down a little bit over time their gear choices to be less bulky, lighter weight options, sometimes more expensive for sure. And that takes time to kind of incorporate all that stuff into your gear. If you're going for one big trip to Philmont and that's your one backpacking experience and maybe some shakedown hikes, you probably don't want to invest in a lot of super ultralight, expensive kind of gear. So you might go with good quality gear that's a little bit bulkier, that's a little bit heavier, and requires, therefore, a little bit larger of a pack size. So the 65-liter to the 75-liter is going to be a good starting point for most people, but you're going to want to make sure that it holds your gear properly. Other than that, some big things to think about are sizing of your pack. So typically the pack is measured by a torso length or designed by a torso length to fit a certain length. So each one of us can measure our own torso. You can look that up, how to do that. There's a certain spot from your hips to the back of your neck, and you want to know that distance. Mine's 21 inches, for example. So I can go out and look at a pack, and am I getting a small, a medium, a large, an extra large pack? And they'll give you the torso lengths. Find your torso length. If you want to go even a step further, go to a place that will actually size you and fit you for a pack. You're going to be so much more comfortable if you get a properly fitted pack to your body frame. The last thing I'll mention too is weight carrying capacity. Philmont tends to have crew gear and cooking gear and some other stuff that's going to be a little heavier, a little bulkier. So not only do you probably want that pack that's the 65 to 75 liters in size, but you're also going to want a pack that can carry a lot of weight. Some of these ultra light packs might have a 30-pound limit. I find a lot of times that's just not enough for most. The average, Philmont visitor is going to probably want a pack that's going to be able to carry somewhere between 35 and 50 pounds. Okay. So when you include food and water, you're going to be able to comfortably carry that amount, and it's not going to, your pack's not going to disintegrate over time because it just either so uncomfortable or not designed to carry that weight. So next, let's talk a little bit about your food kit. Okay, so there's not a lot to this. Philmont recommends that you have a bowl and a spoon. That's it. Pretty easy. So think about lightweight options. You can find some pretty inexpensive options. And so the snap together Fossil bowls are good, lightweight, easy to pack kind of options, but there's lots of different ones. I've seen, titanium, if you want to go that route and spend, $20 on a bowl or $10 on a spoon. But you can also go to like Walmart and go to the camping section, and they have a little mess kit, and you get a bowl and a spoon, and you take it out of the mess kit, and there you go. Those are pretty lightweight and will serve you just fine. They're not quite as packable. A bowl that doesn't fold up or that's not small, so maybe think about that a little bit, because there's only so much space to go around. So that's it. Now, those of you that like to have coffee in the morning, you might want to bring a little cup too. It's not required. It's an option, but I know I'm going to be bringing something because coffee is part of my morning routine. I love to get up in the morning, in the wilderness and make a nice hot cup of coffee. That's just about my favorite time of day. So if you're like that too, maybe look for a lightweight option. There's some inexpensive ones and some that are a little bit more expensive. And again, I'll link all this stuff down below. Next, let's talk a little bit about your water kit. Okay. Now I've got a video, actually I've got a few videos back in the day about a water kit, and then an update to my water kit. And then I actually did a video that's Philmont specific about how to build a better water kit that works well with Philmont. I'll leave a link up above. Go check those out. They all make a ton of sense and give you different variety of options to consider. Now for Philmont, storage is a big part of this. So look at lightweight, collapsible water storage options. So that might be a water bladder for your pack, or it may be a Knock bag or an Evernew, 2-liter collapsible plastic water bottle, something along those lines for water storage. And then I like having a water bottle that is portable. So while I'm at camp or doing programming, I can take a water bottle with me and go to wherever I need to go. So something like a smart water bottle makes a lot of sense. And then I'm also going to have something that is purely for smellables. So Philmont is going to give you Gatorade drink mixes or Acclimate or a whole range of other different drink mixes. So you're going to want to have something that is your only smellable, because if you're putting this drink mix in multiple different containers, then each one of those containers has to go up in the bear bag at night, and that becomes just, you run out of space. So if everybody just has one bottle that is their smellable, then that one bottle has to go in the bear bags. So I use a collapsible water bottle, and I can put drink mixes. It's got a wide mouth, and it's just great for that purpose. So that works great. And then at night, that's really easy to pull out from my water kit and throw into the bear bag, and it doesn't take up much space. If you want another cheap option, a lot of people will use just like a regular, 30, 32 ounce Gatorade bottle, something that has a wide mouth and is fairly lightweight plastic, and that's their drink mix bottle. So, pick one of those up at the gas station and, empty it out. And now you've got a water bottle that's ready for drink mixes at Philmont. Now, that's about all you need. You don't need a water filter. You're going to get chemical tablets. If you want to bring a water filter, you can, but it's not essential. Now, mine are each of those kits, my cook kit and my water kit, each are under half a pound. Okay, so the two of them together, are less than 1 pound total for my cook kit and my water storage. So see if you can do the same thing. And there's options out there, very inexpensive ones, to do that. Next, you're going to have a little hygiene kit or first aid kit. I tend to have something very small, like a small Ziploc bag. And I'm going to have just a few items because you are going to have a crew first aid kit. But it is nice to have something just small in your own pack that's lightweight, that can handle some kind of minor things that come up. So the first thing I want to be able to deal with is blisters. So I typically, in my kit, I'm going to have a little bit of Leukotape. I'm going to have a few Band-Aids, and I'm going to have some kind of, antibiotic ointment, just a little bit of like a Neosporin. Very small pack. Sometimes they're single serving sizes. That's going to be enough. I'm also going to have, I bring a little bit of Body Glide to minimize chafing, so I can put that on in the morning. I will typically bring a little pocket knife, small, lightweight, just to kind of help at Philmont with cutting open the food bags, things like that. That's about all you're going to need. And then I'm going to have typically any medications that I might need while I'm out there. And for me, the big ones are going to be usually enough Aleve to deal with headaches or muscle soreness, things like that. I'm going to have some Benadryl. For me, it also helps me sleep. So sometimes at night, having a little Benadryl before bed, but also just to deal with allergies and whatnot that may come up. And I'll have usually a couple tablets of Imodium. Again, we'll have more in the crew kit, but that's what's going to be in mine. I'm going to have a little bit of a lip balm, just a mini container of lip balm with sunscreen. And I'm going to have my toothbrush and toothpaste or tablets that you can use also in place of toothpaste. That works fine also. I usually throw in a couple earplugs just because sometimes the other campers can snore quite a bit and I want a good night's sleep, so I don't want to hear all of that. And that's about it. Put it all in a little pack and you're good to go. All right, now I'm going to transition a little bit to my clothing systems. And I think this is where a lot of people probably make the most mistakes, and they don't think of their clothing as an entire system. It should all work together. Your layering should be complementary, and it should help you to work in hot environments that are in the 80s and you're sweating a lot and exerting and doing climbs and all this kind of thing on the trail. And also dealing with, hey, we're at the summit of Baldy and it's windy and it's cold. Or, we're getting to the end of a hike at elevation and it's been raining all day and I need to then keep warm and maybe set up camp and change into another set of clothes. So all of these different environments, your clothing system needs to meet that demand. So what I typically recommend for my clothing system is I'm going to have not a ton of different outfits. Okay. Now this may change too if you're doing a 7-day trek, versus, the longer treks. If you're doing the 9-day, the 12-day, all of that, there may be a little bit of change in your clothing system, but probably not a lot. One thing you'll notice is you can hike in the same few outfits they're all going to get dirty. So if you have 4 outfits or you have 2 outfits, they're all going to smell the same by the end, and none of them are going to be really clean. So adding extra and extra redundancies on the clothing just adds weight. Okay. I think you should always have a backup set of clothes for sure. So for me, I'm going to have two pairs of clothes that I hike in, and 1 set of clothes that I can sleep in, and that's enough. Okay. So if I have 2 sets of clothes to hike in, I'm going to have a long sleeve shirt and long pants. And then I'm going to have a short sleeve shirt and shorts. Okay. And then I'm going to have some set of sleep clothes. And the sleep clothes, depending on your trek, you might have a higher elevation one where maybe you want to use some thermals or some, long underwear kind of things. Or you might be at most of your sites at lower elevation, and maybe you've got a heavier sleeping bag and you can go with shorts and a t-shirt, something like that for sleep clothes. So your whole system should be able to complement each other and work together. So I like to wear a hoodie, sun shirt. So long sleeve is in my kit always. That helps with sun protection. So if we look like we're going to have a big sunny day, and maybe it's not super hot, I'm going to wear a long sleeve shirt that has a hood that gives me a little bit of sun protection. If, it's a little bit cloudier, or maybe it's a really hot day, I'm also going to have, my short sleeve and shorts to change into if I want to wear that as well. So that also allows me the ability to wear 1 set of clothes, wash the other, let them dry, and then the next day switch. Where you can add some extra and still be comfortable, I would recommend in your undergarments and your socks. So bringing a 3rd pair of socks, bringing a 3rd option of underwear, I'm completely fine with that. That's the area, I think, where you want to make sure you're the most comfortable, okay, is your feet and those nether regions. So make sure that stuff's taken care of. You don't have chafing. You don't have other issues. That's fine. Now, on top of that basic kind of hiking set of clothing and then your sleep clothes, whatever you choose for that, I'm going to have then some insulative layers. I like to bring a very, very lightweight fleece hoodie. Okay. So lightweight that I want to be able to hike in it a little bit and not completely overheat. Okay. So I'm trying to find the lightest weight, most breathable fleeces, just a little bit of warmth. Okay. Light insulation is what I use for that. And that is what I usually have most of the time accessible on trail. So if you're hiking, you do a climb, you stop, you get a little bit chilly, I'm throwing on that fleece, okay? Or I get up first thing in the morning, I'm throwing on that fleece to just take the edge off that chill. You're at the summit of Baldy, that kind of thing. So that's out during the day in my pack in a place where I can get to it when we stop as needed, okay? And then I'm going to have heavier insulation, so more warmth. That's going to be, again, maybe first thing in the morning you might need it, maybe late at night, sitting around the campfire as the temperatures drop, or you're at the summit of Baldy or one of these Mount Phillips or somewhere else, and it's cold at those peaks, and it's windy. So I bring a down puffy jacket. Okay. So I can layer that on top of my fleece and have extra warmth and extra insulation. And then in the pockets of that puffy jacket, I have glove liners that are just smart wool. And I have a little beanie hat, again, that just comes down enough to cover my ears. So a little bit of warmth, a little bit of protection. That'll take me down close to the freezing mark, maybe even a little bit below, depending on how active I am. Okay. Don't like to hike in my puffy ever. It's purely just when I'm taking breaks, when I'm slowing down, when I'm at camp, when I just need a little bit of warmth. That's when when the puffy comes out. And finally, with my gear system is going to be my rain gear. I typically recommend that you bring a jacket and pants. The pants is the one part that there's a little bit of optional with the pants. Some people like to hike in pants, in shorts, and just get wet and let it dry. I think the rain pants, though, provide the opportunity for warmth. So I like to recommend them just from that standpoint, that there's sometimes in the morning you're wearing shorts, it's too cold out, you just put on your rain pants for a few minutes, you warm up. Or sometimes you're in a very windy condition and you're cold and you're trying to get warm. Adding that extra barrier to just trap that heat in actually works quite well. And that's an area where I would probably invest in a little bit of extra money, potentially to get a nicer set. There's some cheaper options, again, on the list down in the description below, but that's an area I look at. Maybe I'll spend a little bit more. I want to make sure that we're staying dry and warm. Other than that, as I look through my list really quickly, there's not really much else, okay? If you have questions about clothing, please go ahead and leave that in the comments down below. I love to see feedback, suggestions of items that you use, all of that sort of thing. So please feel free to ask questions. I'll even be looking at this video years down the road and responding. So if you see this video's been out for a really long time, don't be surprised. Throw a comment down. You'll probably get a response before too long. So that's my kit. And then I have a dry bag that I put my packed clothing in. So whatever I'm wearing for the day, I'm going to have a ball cap. I'm going to have sunglasses. And I'm going to have some gaiters that I use because I wear trail runner shoes. Okay. So I don't like to get rocks and sand and dust into my sneakers. So gaiters just kind of go over your ankles and keep the dust out of your shoes a little bit, so you don't get those rocks and pebbles and things like that end up under your feet. So that's about it. That's my packed clothes and my worn clothes setup. So I also have some miscellaneous items that I bring, okay, and they might go into this category. The first also might go into my worn clothing category, which is a fanny pack. So I do like to have a fanny pack. I like to have it because, one, it's just more accessible on trail. And then when you get to your destination and you put your packs, your gear's all set up and everything's done, I like taking the fanny pack with me as I'm running around doing program. So it'll have a few different items with me, maybe a snack or two, might have some water, whatever. It may have those kind of things. It just is convenient to have as I run around camp. I bring a chair. So I've gotten my gear list down to a weight limit where I'm comfortable bringing a chair that weighs about a pound. If you haven't gotten your gear list down to a very lightweight, this might be a luxury item that's just too much for you. And in that case, you might bring nothing as a seating option. You might bring a sit pad. You might bring a stool. There's a few different options. I actually did a video a few years ago about Philmont seating. Again, I'll put a link up above. You can go check that out. That's completely still relevant today. So go take a look at that. If you can carry it, but you got to get your weight down to be able to afford some of those kind of luxuries. I bring a trekking pole. On this trek, I'm just bringing one. In previous treks and other backpacking trips I've done, sometimes I'll bring two. The tent that I'm bringing is my own personal tent, and it only requires one trekking pole. So I'm only bringing one trekking pole because of that. And then finally, in my miscellaneous gear is I bring an umbrella. Sometimes that's for sun protection. Sometimes it's for rain. I also have a little attachment that goes on my backpack that clips the umbrella in so that it becomes hands-free. So it's attached to my pack and it's deployed. And that way I can hike in a t-shirt or, my sun hoodie and not have to get my rain gear out. So the only time that I have to get my rain gear out is when it's coming down sideways. And then I have to put the umbrella away because it's just too windy. And then I'll put my rain jacket on, my rain pants on. Now we start to get into my more luxury items for the most part, and that's my electronics. I carry a battery bank. When I go to Philmont, I will take my phone with me to do some GPS tracking, but also taking pictures. That's a big part of what I use my phone for. Otherwise, it's in airplane mode, and it goes in my fanny pack, and I don't worry about it. But I'll get it out for pictures and occasionally just for mapping and navigation kind of things. I bring my Garmin InReach. This is a complete luxury option. You can use it as a two-way communicator, as a text messaging device. For me, I bring it as a luxury item because I can send the tracking information back home to parents that want to follow along just how the scouts are doing. I'll post, a message a day, and it tracks our location so they can see exactly where we are and what we've done for the day. So I like that just as a throwback to the parents at home so that they know how we're all doing. I will also bring an air pump for my air mattress. So I use an air mattress. I don't want to get to the end of the day and be tired and try and blow that thing up. So I bring a cheat sheet. I bring a little tiny pump, and it's pretty lightweight. It's less than 2 ounces. And it'll last me the entire trek. If I needed to recharge it, it's a USB-C, and I can use my battery bank. So I use that. I have a headlamp that I will bring. I use the Nikkor NU20 Classic. It's a super lightweight, rechargeable battery headlamp that's super easy to use. The interface is great. Got a red light, got a white light, different brightnesses, a battery that lasts quite a long time, and it's barely more than 1 ounce. I bring a thermometer. So I actually bring the Govee Bluetooth thermometer. It wirelessly connects with my phone, and I track all the data so that when I get home, I can post a video that shows exactly just how hot it got, how cold it got. I think it's just good for my viewers to have a better feeling for what went on. That's not something a typical Philmont person is going to bring, but I'm a special case, I guess. So the Govee Bluetooth thermometer, I like bringing that. It's been great on my trips around the country so far. And then I will have a small dry bag that all of that stuff goes into to keep it from getting fried in the rain. So that's my electronics. And then finally is my camera gear. So I typically will film with a GoPro, and I will bring an expandable, tripod to get all those shots, and then a backup, a few batteries, and they all go in kind of a battery bank case. So it helps keep all those charged. That'll be plenty to get me through, a 7-day trek without having to recharge any of those kind of things. So that's it. So for me, my list comes to just under 16 pounds. Our goal was to try and get everybody in our crew under 25 pounds. At our last checkout, gear check, everybody made it under 25 pounds. So I was really proud of the guys. All the dads, all the scouts made it under 25 pounds. That's awesome. There were a few that were right around where I am. So super lightweight stuff. And they don't have super expensive gear. So they've just found really creative ways to put together good lightweight kits for under 20 pounds. So good on them. What questions do you have? What thoughts do you have on what I've put together? How I've put it together? Is this something that's helpful? I'd really like to hear about it. I'd really like to know your thoughts. So please, again, comment down below. If you're going to Philmont, let me know when you're going. What route are you getting? What dates? That kind of thing. You can post that stuff down below just to, in the community, everybody can see that. It's nice to see as people get their itineraries and where they're headed and, what peaks they get to summit and all that kind of fun stuff. So post that stuff. And if you found this useful, give it a like, give it a thumbs up. I appreciate that. Again, I'm just trying to give back a little bit with all my experience to help people get better prepared and have a better understanding of how to put this all together. It's not about trying to mimic exactly what I've done. It's more just give you the skills so that you can go do it yourself and figure out with your own kit, how do I put it together? What makes sense? What works best for you so that you can have a great experience. It's not too heavy. You're comfortable. Everything works. So that's what I want to hear. And if you've taken this advice and you've gone to Philmont and made it home, post that too. I want to hear about people what were their experiences like, what worked, what didn't. All of that stuff is great. Pay that forward and let the next generation know from your experience. So that's it. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, everybody, be well and hike on.